Chapter 16. Dancing with Vipers. For what remained of the day, Amira was preened, plucked, perfumed, and otherwise prepared within an inch of her life. After a milk bath, her hair was soaked in honey, then washed, combed, curled, and braided. Her nails were filed and painted, her hands lathered in cream until they were soft as kidskin. Shazni lined Amira's eyes with kohl, stained her lips wine red, and darkened her brows. A sprinkle of gold dust lined her cheekbones and eyelids, enough to make her shine when she caught the light just so. By the time the sun caressed the horizon, Amira hardly recognized the woman in the reflection. She had that thought often over the past several weeks, but tonight, the woman looking back at her was beautiful, striking even. The kohl and gold on her face contrasted light and shadows, like she was a creature that had stepped out of the sunset itself. Her hair, always cursed by her stepmother as the whore's bonnet, was its own crown of curls and braids beneath her coronet. Russet and copper strands dangled around her face and down the back of her neck like threads of fire. And her dress. "You look lovely, my lady," Getria, the youngest of her three maids, assured her. Shazni nodded in agreement, pinning Amira's golden circlet into place. "Tonight, you will be the envy of every woman and the desire of every man." Amira only wanted one man's desire, and she both did and didn't have that. A knock came from the parlor, and Milla went to answer. Amira heard the door open and strained to hear the voices, but couldn't make out anything. Milla returned with a dark figure in tow. Amira glanced up eagerly, only to be disappointed. Instead of the archduke, Talon filled the doorway. He had traded his usual ensemble of muted grays for one of all white, which only made him look paler and somehow even older. Yet he remained as stiff, stern, and austere as ever as he strode into the room flanked by two imperial guards. Amira quirked an eyebrow. Talon's perpetual glare softened only slightly as he took her in. "You are ready, milady?" Amira shot a glance to her head lady's maid. When she was archduchess, she would have 3 or 4 times this number of staff for her personal apartments. But for now, it was just Shazni and the 2 girls. At Shazni's nod, Amira turned back to the valet. "I am, Talon." Talon raised his chin, shoulders square, hands locked behind his back. He had definitely served in the military at some point. "Then I'm here to escort you to His Highness, my lady." He said "my lady" as though he were being forced to say it, like there was a knife that would plunge into his kidney if he didn't. Amira thought about asking the valet why Dangerous had not come himself, but she supposed for a formal event like this, an archduke shouldn't trouble himself. She rose, and her dress fluttered as she moved. "This way, my lady." Talon proffered his arm. Amira accepted his arm and let him lead the way into the hall and back through the palace. The valet took her past groups of laced and bedecked noblewomen and their suited attendants. Every single one of them had a male attendant, whether a son, brother, or even a uniformed servant. They passed a plump matron resembling a toad wrapped in satin and pearls. The toad woman slapped the arm of a young man, presumably her son, with her fan. "That's the Archduke's bride. Bow and stop staring." The young man closed his open mouth and bowed along with his mother and their servants. Amira inclined her head in acknowledgement and did her best not to be self-conscious. She did look striking tonight. Shazni and the maids had done their job well. Amira only hoped Daintrith would approve as much as that random stranger did. Amira followed Talon onward into the more central areas of the palace. They encountered more and more groups of ball-goers, most of which hid behind laced fans or whispered conspicuously as she passed. They were all dressed in blues and whites, a salute to Vesha's imperial crest. Not for the first time, Amira saw that it was the empress the people pandered to. And not for the first time, she wondered if Vesha planned to ever truly step down, whether she had a suitable heir or not. The ceilings rose higher the farther they ventured. Creamy stone and sparkling chandeliers made Amira think of being inside a gigantic pearl. White feathers waved from the women's elaborately styled hair, and men's silver-capped canes tapped against the floor. Jewels glinted, silk rustled, laughter chimed like the clinking of crystal, and servants offered the evening's first libations. From the distance, Amira caught the hum of string music and the blaring of trumpets. Talon led her past the inquisitive courtiers and into a private alcove shielded by a curtain. On the other side of the curtain was a short set of stairs descending one level. The stairs were polished to shine, and candles flickered from the generous sconces along the wall. "Your Highness." Talon stooped into a bow. "I have brought the lady." He indicated the assassin with something less than enthusiasm. "Thank you, Talon." At the foot of the stairs, Daintrith had his back turned, shoulders hunched only slightly. 2 attendants waited on either side of him, lower-ranking valets, if Amira had to guess. "You are dismissed." Daintrith addressed the last part to the valets. The archduke finished adjusting his coat. He was dressed all in ebony, silver threads rimming his collar and cuffs. A narrow silver crown atop his head and a flashing signet ring were the only things that distinguished him as rightful heir of Aramea. Amira waited at the top of the stairs, heart racing. Why was her heart racing? Damn it, if she started sweating in this dress... Daintrith finally looked up and froze. He started with the glinting crown atop her head, gaze sliding down the length of her. Her body heated and tightened under his stare as he took in the lines of obsidian silk clinging to her shoulders and waist. Amira found herself shifting to give him a better view. The bodice left her arms bared. Though the beaded collar rose halfway up her neck, the front plunged, leaving the narrowest strip of skin exposed all the way down to her waist. Daintrith took that in too, eyes tracing the plunging neckline with a slow, meandering gaze that made her writhe with hot, burning energy. Amira lasted for barely 3 heartbeats of silence before she cleared her throat. Heat had already spread across her face and down her neck. "Am I pretty?" She thought that was an appropriate thing to say. She didn't recall ever asking a man that before. The words tasted strange. "No." Daintrith half coughed, half laughed. "No, you're..." His throat bobbed. "You're ravishing, Amira." Daintrith stared. He stared the way he'd kissed. Intense, yet also afraid. Like he was starting things he couldn't stop. "I'm glad you like it," she said, surprised to find her voice husky. Talon cleared his throat. "Your Highness?" Daintrith started, and seemed to remember that the other man was there. "That will be all. Thank you, Talon." Daintrith stepped up to replace the valet at Amira's side. "I will see you later tonight." Talon's thin jaw clenched, but he simply stooped at the waist and sulked away, contenting himself with a final backwards glance at the assassin. Daintrith climbed the stairs to stand in front of her. "Forgive Talon. He only seeks to protect me." "I cannot fault him for that," Amira conceded, watching the valet disappear. She was aware of Thaddred's footsteps approaching before she sensed his car. He must be wearing his ring. Moraine's Thaddred coughed from above. I mean, Moraine's bosom. Amira whirled on him. He stood in a white ensemble edged with red accents. White and red, Daindrath's colors. His bright red cane tapped against the ground with each step, making him look respectable and sophisticated. Sure enough, his signet ring flashed atop it. Amira, you look like an archduchess. Compliments, even from you. Amira tossed her head. What sorcery is this? Damned if I know, Thaddred scoffed. But it must be a mighty spell indeed. Thaddred. Never fear, cousin. Thaddred held up one hand in a gesture of peace. I merely came to give my best wishes before the celebrations. Thaddred. I know. I'll be on my best behavior. Thaddred bowed in a way that made Amira wondered if he hadn't already been at the flagons. I shall do my best not to have a dollop of fun this evening. With that, he made his way back in the direction he had come. He's going to be the death of himself. Amira laughed. Only if some jealous girl doesn't beat him to it. Are you cold? Daindrath appraised her naked arms. No, Amira said, surprised at the huskiness in her voice. Cold was the last thing she was feeling at the moment. Daindrath's mouth tightened, but he didn't look away from her. Neither am I. Breaking eye contact, Amira gestured about the empty alcove. Where are the eager courtiers to escort you into the ballroom? He dismissed the valets, but there should be an entourage. I dismissed them. Daindrath held out his arm. You've gotten me so used to the quiet, I find it hard to give up. Amira accepted his arm, resting her hand in the crook of his elbow. Her body shivered in excitement as she pressed against his side. Are you nervous? He asked. Of course not. I'm about to face down everyone who's anyone in the Empire. Not to mention every girl you've ever snubbed. What's there to be nervous about? Daindrath cast her a wry smile. You're fiercer than all of them put together. I know. Amira gave him her best evil smirk. And that's why I'm not nervous. Daindrath laughed then. A real, full laugh. He threw his head back and she did her best to capture that memory. His hair falling back around his crown, his eyes partly closed and mouth cracked in a grin. Amira stepped lightly beside him, the rustle of her gown like the whisper of leaves. He led her back the way Talon had brought her, to a side archway from which they had a view of the main ballroom entrance. The pair kept to the side as the seemingly endless procession of ball gowns and gilded canes paraded past. No one took notice of them. Daindrath needed to take them to the grand entry, where they would both be announced, but he didn't move. Is something wrong? Amira whispered, not wanting to be overheard. Daindrath shook his head. No, it's just been a long time since I've been in the thick of something this big. Amira tilted her head to the side. I've never been in the thick of something this big, much less the spectacle of the evening, but you don't see me cowering. I'm not cowering, Daindrath said. I'm thinking. His brow furrowed, giving him a pensive, almost scholarly profile. She was aware of every place they touched. The silk and velvet did little to keep her from feeling his tantalizing warmth, or the ripple of muscle under his sleeve. A tightness coiled in the pit of her stomach, and a tingling warmth spread through her body. Amira leaned over until she was almost kissing his neck. Cowering, she teased, letting her breath tickle his ear. Daintrith visibly shuddered, then straightened, his neck flushing red. Good. It wasn't fair for her to be the only one tortured tonight. You're right. Enough stalling. He guided her forward and waved to catch the attention of a uniformed man leaning against the wall. The moment the manservant recognized the Archduke, he raised his hand in a clumsy salute. Your Highness, I'm sorry, my lord, we didn't see you. Quite all right, my good man, Daintrith interrupted, waving his hand in an easy manner. You know what to do, I trust. Aye, sir, I mean, my lord, the manservant stammered, then cursed himself under his breath. Then carry on, Daintrith replied with a friendly smile. The servant scurried ahead, and Daintrith followed, pulling Amira closer as he walked. They slipped down a short passage after the servant, uncertain silence falling over them. They reached a cluster of ball servants identically dressed, all of whom bowed and scraped eagerly before the Archduke. It's a pleasure to once again have you in residence, my lord, someone said, and we are honored to welcome you to your new home, Archduchess. She's not an Archduchess yet, you idiot, another of the servants hissed. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant... It's all right, Amira said with a smile. I'll never ask anyone to apologize for giving me too much honor. The servant breathed a little easier, stooping into another bow. I think you will make a splendid Archduchess, my lady, and Empress too. Amira's smile faltered a little at that. Archduchess, then Empress. How heavy those words were when one explored their full depths. The four servants escorted them to a large archway leading into the main ballroom. It was larger than any of the others. The hubbub of conversation, the merry tune of a volta dance, the click of the dancers' feet, all blended into a single jumble of noise. Announce us when you are ready, Daintrith said. All four of the servants scurried off to see to the task of announcing their nation's future ruler. Amira wasn't sure why that was a four-man job, but supposed she'd find out soon enough. From the ballroom, wooden staffs tapped 4 loud beats in unison against the floor. Amira listened, letting her ears tell her what her eyes could not. Conversations quieted, and the musicians fell silent. A pregnant silence throbbed, then a loud voice rang out. My lords and ladies, I present to you the Viscount of Menadra, Prince of the Forsaken Isles, and Crown Archduke of our beloved Aramea, Daintrith Fandulian, attended by his betrothed, Lady Amira Brindonu of Highlandale and the Istavari. If Daintrith was surprised or displeased they'd announced her as Istavari, he gave no sign. The Archduke took the lead, and Amira followed him into the glittering spectacle. The whole of the room paused, bowing to their future emperor and empress. The sea of lace, silk, velvet, and glittering jewels sank as one. Amira couldn't help but think of an ocean of wealth receding at their feet. Continue. Daintrith's voice brimmed with that same cordial lightness that it had held that night in Lashera, when she had met him properly for the first time. Please, continue, my friends. The revelry resumed, and already the courtiers were forming a queue to greet the Archduke. A robust marquis bowed to Daintrith, exchanging pleasantries which His Highness smoothly returned. The assassin took the opportunity to take in the massive domed ceiling. The roof rose above them like a giant abalone shell, white and perfectly arched. Everything exuded power and mastery, from the massive pillars to the colossal chandeliers strung with crystal casting fractured light in every direction. The walls stretched more than 100 paces in any direction, and the room was filled end to end with the great and good of Aramea, each with their own ambitions, woes, fears, and dreams. the vipers of the empire. From the raised galleries overlooking the ballroom to the buffet tables laden with sweets, eyes watched the couple greedily. Dangerith introduced her to everyone, and only then did they address her, as etiquette demanded. "Dowager Countess, this is my bride-to-be, Lady Amira Brindonu," Dangerith said to a grand woman whose high cheekbones hinted at bygone days of youthful beauty, now replaced by a waddle and an unseemly scowl. The scowl was meant for Amira. The assassin noticed two young beauties on either side of the dowager, her daughters, judging by their matching looks of disdain. Amira acknowledged them without smiling, inclining her head. "I am pleased to see her accompany you. But what of the other young noblewomen, your highness?" The dowager protested. "Do the lasses of the empire not earn at least some of your attention?" She tried to sound teasing, but Amira was convinced there were hints of displeasure in her voice. Amira caught herself bristling. Her first thought was that this woman must want to pawn off a daughter as a mistress. The thought of sharing Dangerith made her sick to her stomach. She never considered herself the jealous type, but if Dangerith planned to keep other women... Dangerith replied with a smile as practiced as Amira's swordsmanship. "My first duty is to my wife, your grace. I am certain you understand. And wife is what she will be soon." Amira straightened, trying not to think about her and Dangerith's conversation after their first kiss. The dowager shot a sharp glance at Amira. "Such a fortunate woman you are, Lady Amira," she said, "to have secured so desirable a husband. There's few worthy of such honor." "Indeed," Amira agreed. "I could never hope to be worthy of His Highness." The dowager's brow furrowed, which for her meant the lines of her face deepened more. "No?" Amira's fingers tightened on Dangerith's arm, yet she never broke eye contact with the dowager. "I don't believe there's anyone alive who is, but I mean to spend the rest of my life trying." Dangerith was one of the several who shot her sharp looks at that. Amira still didn't look away from the dowager. "It pleases me to know that there are so many in the court so concerned for my bridegroom's well-being." She stirred sincerity into the words, thinking of Thaddred and Talon. Regardless of their opinions of her, those two men she trusted with Dangerith. Either of them would die for her fiancé, she had no doubts about that. "Personally, I would cut the heart out of anyone who threatened him, even my own mother." Amira smiled to temper the words. "Truly, he has won my heart, as well as my loyalty." The dowager's jaw dropped like a trap-door. "It was good to see you, dowager," Dangerith said. "I wish you and your esteemed daughters a pleasant evening." With a shallow bow, Dangerith led Amira away, smiling dutifully at the swarm of courtiers vying for his attention. "I'm sorry," the archduke whispered out of the corner of his mouth, grasping forearms with a young man close to his age, before moving on through the crowd. "Don't be," Amira smoothly replied. It was a pleasure to see social graces in action. Dangerith touched her hand before exchanging meaningless pleasantries with the next courtier. Amira carried her head high, staring down anyone who held her gaze for too long. Music carried on, a tune that skipped and pranced like a spring brook. Laughter flowed with wine, and smiles were given freely as false words. Another group of well-wishers began making their way toward Dangerith, a motley collection of blue-clad courtiers with eager smiles. Dangerith whirled on Amira, grasping her hands. "Will you dance with me?" Without waiting for permission, he hauled her through the thick crowd toward the dance floor. Next thing she knew, they were facing one another, surrounded by dancing couples, mere steps from the full orchestra. "I'm not very good at this," she said. and it's been a long time. Rarely had she stayed at her father's feasts and celebrations long enough to dance. Even more rarely had her partners been good enough to make it enjoyable. "Do you not want to?" he asked. Amira grimaced in response. Dangerous dropped his voice and leaned closer. "People tend not to bother you when you dance." Amira gave in. She was beginning to wonder if she would deny him anything, even if he never used the curse again. She clasped one of his hands and rested the other on his shoulder. Dangerous settled his other on her waist, mirroring the poses of the other couples. "Follow my lead," Dangerous whispered. With that, they leapt off into the spirited melody, Dangerous taking her through the steps with a practiced ease that belied years of experience. Amira did her best to keep up and was proud that she mostly managed, but for once the gods pitied her. The volta ended after a few notes, and the orchestra struck up a much slower minuet. Dangerous smiled at her, changing their poses to match the other couples around them. They stopped beneath one of the massive chandeliers, and Amira shot a glance around them. Everything was awash with blue, white, and gold. In their black and silver, Dangerous and Amira were two dark star sapphires, in the middle of it all, two pieces of the night sky made human. They moved in time to the music. It wasn't so hard as long as she paid attention to the general direction. Amira kept thinking some of the couples would collide. They were so caught up in their own conversations. But surprisingly, no one did. Amira cleared her throat. "You look quite nice." The assassin looked away. "I didn't tell you." She'd been too distracted with his reaction to how she looked. Dangerous' faint smile reappeared. "I'd still rather be away from all this." Amira glanced past him, surveying the room. "There's this place in Fayed, along the Highlandale coast." "I know where that is." Dangerous nodded. "Yes. The monks write down all the prayers from the people and leave them around the base of an ash tree." Amira had visited Fayed only a handful of times, but every time she had gone there to leave prayers. Not once had she been able to write anything, though. Some heavy, black, oily emotion had always stopped her. "It's sacred, so no one goes there except on high days. It's a good place to be alone." "Maybe we shouldn't be alone," the archduke said quietly. "As much as I might wish otherwise." "We can go somewhere quiet after this, can't we?" "I don't just mean tonight." Dangerous rested his forehead against hers, and in the softest of whispers said, "I wish things were different." Amira closed her eyes. Her fingers tightened on his shoulder, and she fought the ache that wound through her chest. Something about being told she couldn't have him had revealed how much she wanted him. Amira slipped her hand up and fondled the back of his neck. She stroked through the fringes of his hair, fingers trailing over his skin. She wanted to touch more of him. She wanted more of him. Dangerous drew her closer, pulling her into him and closing them off from the rest of the crowded room. "Amira, we can't." She pressed a finger to his lips. "Don't," she whispered. Just give me this moment." Amira lightly traced his mouth with her fingertips. He was beautiful. He hadn't always been. But now, after getting to know the soul beneath his skin, he was the most beautiful thing she could imagine. Vesha had offered Amira the empire, but she wanted its heir. Out of all the riches, wealth, and fame that had been promised her, all she wanted was this man. She thought then of the Emperor Tristan, the conqueror who had taken what he wanted, loved the woman he wanted, and damned the cost. When had been the last time she had acted on what she wanted? Not what she needed to survive, not what she was ordered to do. What she wanted. Dangerous breath quickened under her touch. Amira. His voice strained, low and husky in a way that sent a triumphant shiver down her spine. Thadrade's words came back to her. Our lot are entitled to our pleasures, don't you think? The world, fate, the gods, or whatever force had chosen her lot in life, owed her this. She wouldn't even ask for anything else. Just this. Amira pulled the archduke down, crushing her lips against his. It was an impassioned kiss, her inexperience making it rough. Dangerous went rigid in place, his arms locked around her, uncertain of what to do. Amira didn't pull back. What did she have to lose? Then Dangerous's hard mouth yielded and his grip on her tightened. He kissed her back with a longing, a hunger, throwing propriety to the wind as whispers erupted around them. Let the court talk. If they wanted to believe she seduced Dangerous into choosing her, who cared? Dangerous broke away, hands on her shoulders, forcing space between them. Why? His voice was ragged, chest heaving. I don't care about him, she said. I want you. Amira, now isn't the time for this. Take me back to my room and I'll prove it to you. Amira wished she could unsay the words the instant she spoke them. What was she thinking? What had possessed her to say that? Dangerous's eyes widened and she thought he would push her away in front of everyone. He merely said, You're worth more than that. His rejection hit like a splash of cold water to her face. The only thing worse than lust making her throw herself at a man was having that man spurn her. She was an idiot, a wanton idiot. The assassin yanked away from him, humiliation burning her face. Dangerous caught her arm, yanking her back. Amira, please, Someone cleared their throat. Your Highness, the Empress summons you to her sola. Amira whipped a glare on two servants in imperial livery. With her luck, they and everyone else had overheard her proposition the archduke. I'll be there in a moment, Dangerous shortly answered through a clenched jaw. He turned back to Amira, voice dropping several octaves. I care for you, Amira, deeply, and that's why I can't. Don't you see? Amira hadn't wanted to hurt him in a long time, but in that moment she could have happily punched him. Why couldn't he see? She never asked for anything, never expected anything from her father, from danger, even from life, really. Now she asked for something. One thing that should have been hers by all rights anyway, but even that was too much. He was going to marry her in name only. To protect her, of course, whether she wanted him to or not. Lady Amira is wanted as well, Your Highness, the servant flatly informed them. Her Majesty also requested that you come at once. Amira looked away, fighting to bottle the stinging sensation that flooded her chest and pricked at her eyes. The air hissed out of Dangerous's lungs. Lead the way. The two messengers bowed and moved back through the crowd. Amira let Dangerous hook her arm through his as they made their way after the footman.